This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. I am joined by John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Good to have you back with us. And I see over the weekend that the Razorbacks have given you something to tweet about.
You know, yes, they did. I enjoy tweeting about the Razorbacks. I enjoy the whole cultural dynamic of Arkansas football.
Do you secretly hope for their poor performance because it does tend to extend the flurry of tweets, or do you want them to be national champions?
I don't think it's that secret that I enjoy the cycle. What gets me, and then is this. I understand being a fan, and I understand supporting and hoping for the best, and sticking by your team. In Arkansas, regarding the Razorbacks, there's this culture that falls every year for the off-season hype. And our supposed sports journalists are writing they're going to go 8-4. They got the chance to beat them. And I'm just thinking, and particularly with the new coach, this off-season, Chad Morris was the greatest off-season football coach I'd ever seen. He went around the state talking about hammer down and left lane and all that business. And then when they lose, these same fans and these same sports journalists, using the word somewhat loosely, start to explain, well, we knew all along they don't have the talent. Well, what was all that hype about? That's sort of what I enjoy chronicling, is the cycle of hype and disappointment. And even the pattern of Arkansas football, even if they really get good, most likely the coach is going to have a motorcycle wreck or something. There's just a pattern here with Arkansas football and with Arkansas athletics.
Yeah.
A woman put on Twitter a conversation she had with her husband, and her husband was saying, and she said, my husband is railing against Chad Morris, wanting to fire him. He lost one game. And then he said, no, it's not that. It's that this happens to Arkansas all the time. First, they can't catch a pop-up, and then they blow a game at Colorado State. So I think that's sort of the culture that I'm trying to capture with a little different approach.
You did mention, though, that if they win the rest of their games out, they can still win the national championship.
I was trying to be positive. It is true that if they go forth and win every game here out, they will have beaten Alabama, Auburn, others, Georgia most likely, in the championship game. So all they got to do is win every week.
That's all it is.
No.
Let's stay in the arena of sports here real quick, because I want to get your take on your favorite sport, tennis. Serena Williams in the U.S. Open this weekend. I think this is a controversy we've not heard the last of as of Monday here. You witnessed what happened. If you didn't see it live, you probably watched.
I was watching football live, but I have had ample opportunity to relive every moment.
Was she justified in her complaining there? Was she treated differently than a male tennis athlete would have been treated?
Short answer, yes. Fuller answer, early in the tournament, I put it on the Twitter. Now, if you just follow me on Twitter, you'll be up on this. I said, tennis is the most ridiculously officiated game, regulated game I've seen. This was after a misbehaving male player who had just quit, started just going through the motions, was pouting, being infantile. During a break, the umpire came down out of that big seat and gave him a pep talk. Told him it was not good for the sport that he was behaving. Now get out there and try. This is like the referee Saturday night going into the Colorado State huddle and saying, come on guys, you can still win this. And then they talk about how coaching in tennis is against the rules. And yet they show every player looking to every player's coach and the coach telling them things, verbalizing what amounts to coaching as much as a basketball coach does on the side of the court, and yet it's not enforced. Now, I was slow on this uptake with Serena. I thought, what is this? Was she just being a sore loser and insolent? Or then I thought, because I'm old and white and from a different generation, is this a racial thing? It took me a few minutes to get what it is, and I'm going to get better with this. I promise that. It was a Me Too. It was a women's issue. That's what it was. That all of a sudden, after all this coaching all week, this umpire decides to give her a citation for coaching. Then she calls him she gets mad and calls him a thief and or something else.
Demands an apology, which I think was justified.
Right. And then she slammed her racket because she's getting beat. Let me tell you, Bobby Jones once said, he was a great golfer, considered a great gentleman golfer. I believe it's his quote, "There are some emotions I simply cannot have with a golf club in my hand." As a tennis player who'd rather not lose and doesn't like making boneheaded mistakes, I have smashed a couple of rackets in my time. So have countless other male players, perhaps in this tournament. So it took me a few minutes, but I got it. This was a women's issue. It was an equal treatment of women's issue, and it's big. We've not heard the last of it, and there's now talk in the New York Times, commentary, Washington Post. Tennis needs a commissioner. Tennis needs, instead of having different rules for every major, and you got your WPT this and your ATA that, sort of consolidated with standardized rules and codes of behavior for the officials as well. And I think we're going to hear about all that. We're also, this is yet another advancement in getting somebody like me to understand the full extent of the new day in equal treatment for women. I
smell a column in the making. I smell a column.
Well, it won't be tomorrow, it won't be Wednesday, but it might be Sunday. But yeah, it's coming. It's coming. So this was a big moment. Yes. Okay.
All right, let's talk some politics, which also stirs some emotions from time to time.
Indeed.
So it's a good lead into all of this here.
Yes.
I'm going to start with issues 1, 2, and 3. We've released our polling on that. This is tort reform, this is voter ID, and this is term limits. I'll let you pick which one you want to talk about in terms of those 3, because we don't have time for all 3 of them.
Well, shoot. Issue 1.
All right, issue 1. We have it at 25% support, 47% against. Why do you think the numbers are sitting where they're sitting?
Issue 1 is the so-called tort reform, which also would allow the legislature to set rules of the court, set caps, and is the long-held initiative of the Chamber of Commerce, the business community, the nursing home establishment, and the medical establishment to try to limit their liability, limit their insurance rates. And they're going to spend a lot of money on this thing if it stays on the ballot. And they've long thought if we can just get it to the ballot, we can pass it. This poll, the reason I laughed, is that it shows the opposite in terms of basic sentiment, sort of baseline sentiment. And it also shows they may have gone too far, because in your question, appropriately, you did mention, just in a casual little phrase, among other things,
it's in the ballot.
That's in the ballot title, that this will transfer rulemaking authority courts to the legislature, which, as you know, is awash in corruption. Corruption exceeding anything that I really understood until very recently. So they may have overreached, plus their idea of capping damages and setting a value on non-economic, or a cap on the value of a life beyond economic damages. That may not be as basically popular as they think. Now, that said, the poll gives us a baseline. We're getting ready, we're 60 days away, and we're getting ready to be hit with millions of dollars of advertising on both sides, most of them, if it stays on the ballot, because a court,
well,
a judge,
I think that they will continue to spend advertising-wise while this court appeal goes on, because there won't be enough time to shape public opinion on this one way or the other.
Right. I mean, if it stays on the ballot and we actually have votes that
count
is what I meant. But I appreciate you correcting me on that, or amplifying my comment.
Thank you.
But your poll is sort of a baseline of attitudes. But as one of the lawyers fighting this told me once, they're going to spend $10 million. Maybe that may be an exaggeration, I don't know. That's a lot to spend in 60 days. Telling people that if you don't vote for issue 1, you're going to lose your doctor and your job. I think that's what they'll basically say. The other side is going to say they're putting a cap on grandma's life and on children's lives, and they're turning the rulemaking over to these corrupt legislators. That's how it's going to be. And the greater money will be on, and the simpler message, jobs, doctor, is on the pro side. So all that is subject to how effective and how inundated we are with these messages. So it could be entirely different from what this poll shows, no fault of the poll, just because it's all there to be driven. And keep in mind, as we've alluded, it's under, a circuit judge threw it off the ballot because it tries to do 4 or 5 things that he said aren't related sufficiently to be one amendment proposal. It goes to the Supreme Court, and we've got a famously erratic, hard to predict Supreme Court. So it may not even be there for votes to count. But that was a very instructive poll in terms of the general baseline of how people feel about it.
And we saw that number, generally speaking, across all 4 congressional districts. This was 4 polls combined into one super sample there.
The Chamber of Commerce people,
the numbers are pretty consistent.
The Chamber of Commerce people rushed out with a news release yesterday within seconds of your poll release, saying we've got 3 polls which show that it's going to pass when the voters understand, you know, the issues, which means they've done 3 push polls probably trying to test their message, and if the voters are told a certain thing, then the numbers are different. But I mean, your polls are good. They're solid, historically solid.
Again too. We'll test
but
it closer to
but as you
day.
say, it's not aberrant congressional district to congressional district. You did a full, massive statewide sample,
right?
But because you did sufficient samples for meaningful results in each of the 4 congressional districts, so you got it.
So let's go to the congressional districts here, and let's look at where things are shaping up. Congressman Rick Crawford, 57-22 over his Democratic challenger Chinton Desai. Congressman French Hill in the second, 49.5 to Clark Tucker's 40.5. Steve Womack in the 3rd district, 53-31 over Democrat Josh Mahoney, and in the 4th district, Representative Bruce Westerman, 54-24 over Democrat Hayden Schammel. This would suggest that if you were wondering if there is a blue wave in Arkansas right now or the red tide is holding, that the red tide is holding. Speak to me generally on this.
Generally, this is the post-2010 red takeover of Arkansas, unchanged, status quo, inertia. For all the noise about Trump, for all the noise about health care, for all the noise about a blue wave nationally, which I still think is probably going to happen, at least to the extent that the Democrats can take control of the House. They only need to pick up like 25. None of that applies in Arkansas. Arkansas is still the Tea Party-driven, Trump-beholden, Trump-loving state of 2010, 2014, 2016, in which the Republicans have just kicked tail 60-40, basically, even with solid Democratic candidates. It's interesting there how much the state has changed. Remember, we used to the 3rd district, Northwest Arkansas, was the Republican district. The 1st district, early this century, this millennium, was solidly Democratic, as was the 4th. You had Marion Barry and Mike Ross. If you look at
even in 2010, when you had Mike Ross running for re-election, when the Republican wave was taken over, he won the 4th district with 17%.
He did, and thanks for that. But the point I was trying to get to is that
the 2nd district.
No, I'm going to get to the 2nd. But if you look at your highest incumbents number is Rick Crawford's in the 1st.
That's right.
Which was Democratic not that long ago. The 2nd is Bruce Westerman's in the 4th, 54, no, 57. 53 is Womack in Northwest Arkansas. Not only is the red wave set, but it's changing internally. In that the old Republican district, actually, it may be changing a little bit democratically.
Josh Mahoney's number at 31
He's at 31.
Was the 2nd highest among all the Democrats.
It's very, very high. That leaves, if you wanted to talk about it specifically, the 2nd district race.
Let's talk specifically about the 2nd congressional district. Clark Tucker is still an excellent candidate for the Democrats. French Hill is a good and unique candidate for the Republicans in that he's got a base in Pulaski County, which is a county that the Democrat has to win in a big way. There's still time for this to shift. There's still going to be a lot of money spent in the 2nd congressional district. I expect this race to tighten up considerably, but it is still a 9-point lead for French Hill.
I believe your poll, 49.5 for Hill, 40.5 for Tucker, has a significant deflating effect for a lot of Democrats in the 2nd district. There has been enormous enthusiasm for Tucker. Whenever I have written that, you know, he's still up against it in the outlying counties, and this remains a Republican advantage district, I've had his supporters telling me, you're just not out there, you're not seeing. It's the backlash to Trump, it's the health care issue, it's that he's a good candidate, it's that French Hill's not a strong incumbent, we're going to do it. They may still think they're going to do it, but this poll suggests it's status quo, it's inertia. I mean, it's a 9-point lead is enough to be comfortable. A 9-point lead explains why you don't go on your and Channel 7's debate.
Right.
I mean, why do that? I'm ahead by 9 points. It's big enough. See, this race started out likely Republican. Then Tucker got in and people moved it to lean Republican. And I was really looking forward to your poll because I wondered, does it change that? And I think the poll is influential in that, and you may not want it to be, but I think in a way it is, because if we were sitting here today and talking about, hey, it's 42-41, which I thought it might be.
Sure.
Just at this point.
Then it would move that race to toss-up.
Then it moves to toss-up. The national talk is toss-up. The national Democratic spigot will open, and people say, let's get down there to Little Rock. We may steal one in Arkansas. We got a good candidate. But they're going to look at 49.5, 45, 40.5, a 9-point difference from a credible polling outfit that's been on top of it since 2010, as best I can tell, and they're going to say, no. I think that next impetus that the Tucker campaign needed, which was a validation of its enthusiasm and enough to attract some national support and some national interest, some national money, this poll sort of dampens that. Therefore, I think it's influential. You are right, though. It's a weird poll, but as you've explained to me, Pulaski County is the Democratic base. French Hill's up 46-44, albeit that's a statistical tie.
Yeah.
Oddly, up in Faulkner County, Clark Tucker is ahead.
Yeah.
Those
are smaller samples when you get down to that level. But I will say this, French Hill won Pulaski County with 47% last time around. So for him to be at 46 is not necessarily abnormal.
He did get beat pretty badly the first time in 2014 by North Little Rock Mayor Pat Hayes.
Yeah, but he still lost Pulaski County in 2016, but again with 47%.
Yeah, I'm saying that I was surprised that he is ahead, but there are a couple of things to consider. One is he is, after all, from here also. Clark Tucker's not the only Little Rock upper crust guy running in this race. I mean, French Hill was a banker here and is well known here. Two is, and you can speak to this better, and Dr. Barth could too, but in a poll of this type, when you do a district, congressional district poll, your full district-wide sample mathematically is big enough to give you some solid findings. It may be aberrant within counties because those are smaller samples. So
correct.
But you think it
very good explanation.
But it all works out.
Yes.
So Tucker might be ahead in Pulaski County. I think he probably will win Pulaski County, but he's not going to carry Jason Rapert's Faulkner County. I don't believe. I believe you had a small sample aberrant finding in that particular locale. But as you say, if your sample's big enough, if you know your math, the overall district-wide sample will work all that out. So I think that's what's happened here.
And I have learned to trust the data over the years. There's been times when I've questioned it.
Well, we used to order up polls at the Arkansas News Bureau, and I would get them back, and I go, oh man, I wish it didn't show this, because you know you're just going to hear all these complaints. Yeah. Tucker people are going to say, well, this is a bogus poll. Got us behind in Pulaski County. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's the numbers. The numbers are what they are. They called people, and this is what they got. Yeah. And this is, you may as well face it.
There will be some consistencies as the poll rolls out, where you see some of the other issues and some of the other candidates that we polled to, that in the 2nd Congressional District, it mirrors largely what we were seeing on some statewide trends as well.
That said, it's not over. I mean, there's still a potential race here. 9 points is not prohibitive. Just like 27-9 was not prohibitive in Colorado State the other night. You know, things can happen.
Look at how you pulled all that back together.
I try. Anything for you, my man.
All right. He's John Brummett with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Always good to get your analysis. Thank you so much.
Always good to get your numbers. Thank you.
All right. That's all for today's program. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.